Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Confessions of an Autism Mom. I am Amanda, and this week I have another amazing mom. Her name is Christina, and we get the best of both worlds with Christina because she's an autism mom, but she also works with kids that have other disabilities, and she's very great with IEPs, and that is what we're going to talk about today. How are you today, Christina?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for
Good.
asking. And I always like to thank my guests at the beginning for coming on and sharing your story with us.
I'm
So
happy to be
thank
here. Thank
you.
you.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. Can you start off by telling us about the beginning of your journey as an autism mom? What made you get your daughter diagnosed and like the early signs?
With us, it started a little bit before 2 years old. She's always been very excitable, very physically so. So we'd see like the smile, but we'd see the arms kind of flapping, which is pretty characteristic of a child with autism. We always saw some toe walking, some sensitivity towards clothing. But it was really before 2 years old, we saw that lack of eye contact and she stopped responding to her name. So that was kind of where we knew it was a little bit more than just a personal quirk, and we knew that it could potentially be autism. So at that point, we kind of knew. We weren't really sure what to do until somebody at our daycare actually brought up early intervention and more programming, and then it all kind of spiraled from there.
Okay. And I love to hear that when people say the daycare kind of intervened because I didn't have the best experience with the daycare. They kind of brushed him off as like behaving badly. And so I had to move him from multiple daycares in the beginning of our journey. So I love that the daycare was there and supportive of you all. So
I'm so sorry, I'm having some connection issues there.
I was going to say, can you hear me? I'll pause it really quick. Hold on. So with that being said, how did it feel getting that information from the daycare staff? How did you feel about it?
At first, it was incredibly frustrating. I would come back and pick her up from a long day at work, and it was always, well, my daughter's name is Lucy, and it was always, well, Lucy didn't really play with any other kids today. Lucy's struggling to use a fork or knife. Lucy's struggling to eat out of an open cup instead of one with the lid. And I got to the point where I was like, gosh, ladies, can you please say something nice today? I thought it was just me. But then I
Yeah.
also kind of had to take a step back and thought, well, there is a lot to what they're saying. There are 12, 15 other kids in that same room with kids that are all the same age. So maybe there was a little bit to it. But I did notice some things like when she said that my daughter wouldn't talk to anybody and they didn't know that she could talk. And I sure enough had videos on my phone and things of her singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And quite honestly, the girl didn't stop talking at home. So I thought it was kind of interesting that she would be one person at school or daycare and then somebody else at home. So we did, we love the staff there at that daycare. We did kind of trust everything that they said, and we did follow through with the paperwork to get her enrolled and tested for some early intervention, which now that's what kind of got us started with the early intervention and the autism diagnosis. So
Okay.
what was first really difficult for me to hear was actually a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
There were some days that my mother-in-law would watch her, other days that my mom would, but just having that amount of children and being able to compare her and tell us where
Yeah.
she was developing a little bit differently, that was actually really helpful to us and really gave us some good data to bring into early intervention and then to give later to our developmental pediatrician for an official diagnosis.
Yes. Oh, and I do like that. I would rather have that versus not having a solution and just always
Yes.
complaining about my child. So I'm glad that they were able to give you that solution. Can you walk us through the referral to like the early intervention and then the developmental pediatrician,
Mhm.
the steps and the timeline of the testing? Because
Sure.
what I'm noticing, like interviewing different moms and having them on my podcast, the
Mhm.
timing and the wait lists are all different.
They are. They're a little different. So we were able to get her into early intervention maybe just before 2. So when we had started noticing some of those signs, that it was really hard. They we were overwhelmed with information, but the great thing about the early intervention is that they were able to implement a lot of their services and programming at the daycare. When we actually got started with them, though, they did an entire battery of testing. They came to our house, and the whole time I was like, oh my God, my house isn't clean. This is a mess. I was overwhelmed with information and people. We had we had an OT, a physical therapist. We had a couple other personnel that were just in our house. They brought tons of things to do some sort of play-based assessment, which it was great, but I was not ready for just
Mm.
the whirlwind that would come into our lives. So we did that for about a year until my daughter turned 3, and at that time students age out of early intervention. So we continued working with one of the therapists. She has a private practice, so we continued there until we were able to get a little bit more information about an autism diagnosis.
Oh,
We live in a southwest suburb of Chicago. We're in Orland Park, and I'd heard some great things about Lurie's Children's Hospital in downtown Chicago. The wait list for them was tremendously long, though. I want to say 9 months at the shortest end. And at that time, not only did we lose all of those services for early
uh-huh.
intervention because my daughter turned 3, but we also headed into COVID too. So that global pandemic shut everyone down. We were doing therapies through Zoom, which I can't even have meetings through Zoom or through a computer sometimes as a professional. I don't know how they expect children to do it. It was so
Yeah.
difficult. So they were able to get us in. However, it would be a virtual diagnosis. And I thought, absolutely not. They may give us an autism diagnosis, but whatever diagnosis we had, we wanted to make sure that it was real. We wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
our daughter was able to have a connection with the professional. So we ended up waiting a little bit longer. By the time the world opened up again, it was still 9, 12 months. I was able to get us in just under 3 months.
Okay.
I was positive and persistent and probably really annoying to those professionals at Lurie's because I would call every Monday morning and say, "Hi, this is Christina. This is Lucy's mom. Got any canceled appointments this week?" I'm like, "No, not this week." I was like, "Okay, thanks so much. Talk to you next week." I think they hated me. But eventually, after a few weeks of calling, they were able to tell me, "You know what? We actually have somebody canceled for tomorrow. Can you come in?" Yes, I will absolutely take a day off work. We drove downtown
Mm-hmm.
and we got it done. And sure enough, she did. She did have that diagnosis for autism, which we knew, and it was there was always a little bit of grief, but
Yeah.
I was ready for it. While I was making those calls on a Monday morning, I was checking her insurance, calling around to different ABA clinics and other therapy locations, saying, "Hey, we have a diagnosis. This is our insurance. Are you taking new patients? And do you accept our insurance? Are you under that umbrella? Sounds great. We'll let you know when we've got a report." So even though it was tough to accept that we had that diagnosis, it opened up a window of therapies and services
Yeah.
that we were able to get. So I was just, I would not slow down at all when we were waiting for that. So just the positivity and the persistence,
Yes.
that really helped.
Yes. And that's the thing too. I think a lot of people forget that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to be upset, but you still have to be persistent in getting your baby in those services. And you also have to be positive that somebody is eventually going to say, yeah, you all come in
Mhm.
and we have that space, for the services.
Absolutely.
Because I know when my son got his diagnosis, I was calling places for like 2 weeks straight, all day, every day, like at
Mhm.
work. Like I'm not at that job anymore, but that's how persistent I was. Like
Mhm.
any moment I had, and even some of the places, I know a couple of places like, well, we talked to you last week. And I was like, oh, I'm just making sure,
Good to
and
talk to you then.
like here I am again, but he ended up getting the services he needed.
Yes.
Like parents are like, they're waiting a year, and I'm like, yeah, no, I couldn't wait a year. Like
Mhm.
I had to get it. Out of those 2 weeks
Yes.
of calling, we started the center like 3 weeks later, and that
That's
was
amazing.
because of insurance purposes. Like we had
Mhm.
to get that authorization and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's my key thing to parents, like new parents, stay persistent. You'll get those services.
Mhm.
So
That's
let's
amazing.
jump into you working with various of special needs kids
Mhm.
as a special education teacher.
Yeah.
What made you take that route as an educator?
It was actually something that happened before my daughter. My mom was a teacher. She went back to school when I was in elementary school. She worked a couple of years at a Catholic school and was offered the opportunity to teach special education. She did not have that degree, but at that time they just kind of grandfathered her in. So long as she was taking classes and working towards that certification, she
Uh-huh.
could continue to teach. So it was something that I was always inundated with. A lot of her friends were teachers, so they'd get together for pizza and appetizers, and I'd walk upstairs, and it's always IEP lingo and acronyms and teacher talk, and it was just always something that I was around, even as a young age. So through high school, I took opportunities to do any different childcare classes, things that might help me make sure that this was for me. I was in our Future Educators Association, and then through high school, I knew that I wanted to go into special ed, so declared that as my major and was able to find a program that had me get that degree as an undergraduate. So it was always something that I knew that I wanted to do, and I didn't realize how important it would be in my life until my daughter came.
And let me say, I can speak for all parents, no matter what the special needs is. We really appreciate you because it takes a special type of person to work with our kids. And I know you see it on a regular from home
Yeah.
and in the workplace. So you get what I'm saying. Like we appreciate it because
Yeah.
it's a certain level of patience that you have to be a special ed teacher. Even a teacher, I feel like there's a certain level
Yes.
of, of patience that you have to have. So we do we appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
What are some misconceptions? I want to get into the IEP part.
Sure.
So, what are some misconceptions that you see that a lot of parents have when it comes to IEPs? And if you can also just kind of break down for the listeners and the viewers what an IEP is. Can you do that for me?
Absolutely, I can. So an IEP stands for Individualized Education Program, and it is a legal document that will break down a student's present levels of performance, whether it's academic, social, speech, language, and their individual goals to work on. Students are identified for an IEP through the school, or a parent can request an IEP through their school district, and different formalized testing will take place at the school level to find out that if there is a deficit in student learning. One thing that I like and that I do find is a misconception for parents is that a medical diagnosis does not always equate to a learning disability. So I get a lot of people that'll come to me and say, well, my child has a diagnosis from, like my daughter, Lurie's Children's Hospital for autism. That means she needs an IEP for autism. Not necessarily. An IEP is a document that will support a child if their deficits have a negative impact on their performance in the academic setting. So if it's something that can impact them in the academic setting or socially or at school,
Okay.
that's when an IEP would be considered. So that's one misconception, is that a medical diagnosis doesn't always equal an IEP. Some other things that I would love parents to know at an IEP meeting is that a quiet and quick meeting, that's not always the best meeting. We have a lot of meetings, and from the teacher side, we'll think, oh, it's a quick meeting. Parent didn't ask any questions. And now as a parent, I'm wondering, yeah, maybe because they were confused. Maybe
Mhm.
because you used a lot of acronyms and you went through your report really quickly, speech path, or that maybe they just didn't know the questions to ask.
Okay.
So one thing that I would love parents to know is that it's okay to ask questions during the meeting, and it's okay to question things. I want parents to know that they can ask for that document in advance too. because there are a lot of acronyms and testing information. And if they want to Google things or go on ChatGPT and break it down into things that are a little bit easier to digest, that they can do that.
Okay.
And I think the last thing that I want parents to know is that they don't have to sign that document at the meeting. You can bring that thing home, give it to aunt, uncle, give it to a friend, give it to an advocate, somebody else to look over. Because if they don't get that document in advance, it can be long and it can just be a lot.
Yeah.
So you do not have to sign it at the meeting. You can definitely tell the team, I'm going to take this home. I want to look over it over the weekend. And then can I send you some questions? And that's totally fine.
Thank you for that. And I learned something new too, because now I do know my son probably will need an IEP, but I always thought because they had autism or they may have like ADHD that they
Mm.
have to get an IEP. So that is something good to know as well. Um I'm glad you brought up the quick meeting means I hear a lot of parents say, like, oh, yeah, I was just saying yes, no, yes. And I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if I was supposed to do that. And later on, they're like, I made a mistake by saying yes or no and ending the meeting.
Mhm.
So I'm glad you brought those viewpoints up. So thank you for that. What should parents do if they feel like the child's IEP isn't being followed?
I would ask about any of those suspicions. One thing that I like to do is keep communication really clear at the beginning of the year. So I start strong at the beginning of the year, introduce myself to even my daughter's speech path, her special education teacher, case manager. I get their information in emails just in case I have any questions. But if parents have any suspicions, they can ask about them.
Okay.
I know at least in Illinois, service providers like the speech pathologist, the physical therapist, the occupational therapy, they legally need to provide their information to the state, and they put dates that they've seen the students and maybe some quick notes about what they worked on because they bill for Medicaid, which just go back to support state funding and some of that money goes back to the school. So they do have data logs of the dates and times and things that they've worked on with students. So if a parent has a concern about, I don't know if my child's really getting speech, they can ask for those data logs too.
Okay.
That's something that service professionals keep. So totally up for grabs for parents too.
Gotcha. So I always see on social media, I'll see parents do these videos. They're like, "Oh, my child has an IEP, but the school is steady calling me because they say he or she are doing this or doing that." Does it really protect like those type of behavior? Like,
Mhm.
can you explain that and break that down for me? Because I feel like there's a disconnect in what the IEP does as a protection for our kids.
I feel like in terms of behaviors, if you're talking about like a child maybe acting out or exhibiting maybe some destructive behavior, if the school district needs to reach out to the parent, then that means that document isn't as tight as it needs to be. That
Mm,
there needs to be some improvements in that document because that document is supposed to support them in that school setting. And if they're coming to the parent and saying that they need additional support, then that IEP is really not working as well as it should be.
okay.
So that to me tells me that the IEP team needs to come back to the table,
Mhm.
reevaluate what's going on, try and figure out why the student's doing what they are doing. Maybe they're trying to get out of a situation. Maybe they're trying to access something else. Maybe they like going to the calming corner. Try and figure out exactly what it is that the child is getting and see what they can do to support the child. So it might be going back to that drawing board, doing another functional behavior assessment, a couple things like that. But if I'm getting calls from the school, it means the school can't handle it. And that means that that document needs to be revisited.
Gotcha. Because I haven't reached the IEP stage, so I don't really talk about it or comment on it.
Mhm.
Because I feel like in the community, it's very important to only talk about and comment on things that you're experiencing. So I feel bad for the parents, and I always want to ask extra questions, but I feel like why ask questions if you don't have a solution? But I've always wondered because I see a lot of videos saying, "Oh, the school called me and I couldn't work today because the school," and of course the parents are really irritated. So I've always wondered that.
That
So
makes
thank you for
sense.
clearing that for me. So You mentioned keeping communication clear during the IEPs and even after the IEPs. What are some effective ways that parents can do that?
Like I said, I love starting strong at the beginning of the year. I show up to my school district calls it a moving in night. My daughter's district will call it an open house. It's that day at the beginning of the year where you bring all the boxes of Kleenex and school supplies and all that fun stuff, and you meet the teacher and grab her email address. That way you know who to ask any questions to. This past year at my daughter's open house, they also had a sign up for her different parties. So I signed up for as many parties as I could. I knew that as a teacher, I'd have to take a day off or a half day, but I still want to be able to support that team too. So I took off a half day on Halloween to watch the Halloween parade for 10 minutes, but to support her and to support the teachers. Took off another half day around Christmas time. They had a winter party. Did the same for Valentine's Day. So I continued to show up not just for my daughter, but for the team. That way they know that I will help them and that we can work together and that we're a partnership. So all of those events, concerts, things like that. I also, my daughter has a really sweet communication log with notes about her day, and they'll write something about the morning and the afternoon.
Yeah.
I know that that takes a lot of time and effort for those teachers to fill in. I will always write back. Whether if she had fun in PE and won a game, I'll write, oh, so exciting. Or just a note at the bottom that says, thank you for all your support. Have a great weekend, ladies, or happy Mother's Day. Something to let them know that I'm there for them too. We just had Teacher Appreciation Week, so I stopped and got each of them a gift too. Just the little communication here and there really does make a big difference.
Okay. You hear that, ladies? Just stay involved is what she's saying. And let them know that, we're all one team. So I love that.
Use kindness over here.
Yes. Approach everything with kindness.
Yes.
And how is your mental health? Because you work with kids with various disabilities, and then you come home to your daughter who's on the spectrum. Like, how do you manage your mental health?
Oh, we're in therapy.
Okay. Me too, girl.
We started that in 2020 when the world shut down and there was a possibility of her needing the autism diagnosis. We started therapy. We are on medication. We like wine.
Love the wine.
we do all the things. I've got a great group of friends too that I've actually met. It was through Facebook. Somebody had just thrown on there, hey, any parents of kids with disabilities want to go out and have a play date? And it turned out to no children were involved, and we drank margaritas at a Pepsi's. And I've made some really great friends who are in this with me, with kids with neurodiversities, and we are just in it together. So doing some stuff on my own, doing some stuff with some friends, it has helped tremendously, because there are days where I will come home and after working with kids with disabilities, I don't want to talk to anyone. And then I've got to do it all over again until bedtime. And it can be a lot.
And so you mentioned you found your tribe on Facebook. How important is that on the journey?
Oh my gosh, it's huge. I have some great friends that I knew before I got married, before I had my daughter, Lucy, and they are still around. However, there is just something in finding that tribe of other parents. In my case, it's 2 other women with kids with autism. And there's something about going out with them and not needing to apologize for being late. Not needing to apologize because I didn't put on makeup today, guys. Sorry. Oh, you think I look nice? I'm wearing a dress. I just didn't feel like putting on pants today. Let's be real. So it's nice to have that safe space where you don't need to say sorry. You don't need to worry about being late. It's huge. And like I said, I had friends prior to my daughter, and my husband has 3 siblings, but at the time, nobody had kids with disabilities. Nobody really knew what to say. And when my daughter's diagnosis came out, there were a couple people that said that, oh, I'm so sorry. No, don't say that. They made me feel like something was wrong. And there was nothing wrong. And it took my brother to actually tell me, oh, good. That's one more thing for us to love about her. Yeah. Oh, and I lost it. I cried. Like, thank you. Oh, that's really sweet. But you need those friends who are going through it because they'll say
They're
the
under,
things that will really lift you up.
yeah, and I get that too. I have a couple of friends that have kids on the spectrum, and I do have other friends, but there has been conversations of, well, you all going to play date with them quicker than us, and it's kind of like, well, I don't have to apologize, or they
You
understand when my baby has a meltdown, like things
know?
like that matters. And I've expressed to them, like, I don't think you're judging me, but I do see kind of like the side eyes because I have to handle him differently during meltdowns.
Yeah,
Or if he's playing, he may want to go sit in a corner and look at his tablet, and you all are like, oh, he needs to play, not understanding that's his moment to kind of like relax, you know? So
absolutely.
I completely agree with that. What advice do you have for moms that feel isolated and don't have anyone on this journey? Because you seem like you have a really great support system.
I had to get out of my comfort zone. I had to
Mm,
kind of recognize that my friends kind of aren't cutting it right now.
right.
And they were great. They're great for Christina, but they
Mm,
weren't good for Christina and Lucy.
mm,
So we would go and try and participate in their play dates. But when my daughter was screaming and kicking and fighting, and before we really got a lot more social work and some ABA therapy, there was hitting, there was punching, there was biting. And the looks that I got from them, it didn't help us. They didn't quite know what to say. So I really needed to get out of my comfort zone. I
yeah.
found a couple support groups online. Um, some in the state of Illinois, some are just generic autism mom groups. I had to find somebody to talk to because my friends, I could talk to them, but they weren't able to really understand. I could talk to family, I could talk to my in-laws. Same thing. There was a limited ability to understand because they weren't going through it as well. So I really had to get out of my comfort zone. I found some online groups and I even participated in some play dates too.
Yeah. And I
So
agree with
that
you.
was really helpful.
I agree with you about the comfort zone because I'm normally like, I'm not shy, but it takes me a minute to be like, okay, let me get to know this person, or I'm going to go to this group and try to make friends. And I've noticed, like, on this journey since Aiden, like,
Mhm.
I've become so open, willing to talk to new people and figure it
Yes.
out. I still kind of get like a little social anxiety, but it has gotten 100% better since him. So,
Yes, it takes me a minute to kind of gauge people, and then somebody will say something. I'm like, "Oh, great! Oh, I can swear around you. Exciting! We're best friends now." It takes me a minute to figure out who I can
yeah,
be real with, or who I can joke around with, who's got kids around my
yeah,
age, so we can all sit around and talk about Care Bears or whatever it is. So it does take a little bit of time, but when it works, it really
it
does work.
works.
So my village might be small, but they're a mighty group,
And love
and we love
that.
them for it.
I love that. All right. So you have a side business, or your
Yes.
business is called IEP Clarity.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a quick moment. What is IEP Clarity?
IEP Clarity came from last year at my daughter's school district. We found out that they were not following the IEP.
Mhm.
I was able to use some information from her communication log, from her email, and I mean, thank goodness I have some knowledge in special education and was able to really figure out what a disservice they were doing to her, how much more she could have been gaining staying in the general education class instead of she was exhibiting some behavior, so they pulled her to self-contained for more than half of the year. I followed a state complaint, or I filed a state complaint rather. Ended up working with, I think there was a state appointed lawyer I was given, and there was one from the school district. So prior to any mediation, we had to meet with that IEP team a few different times to kind of get some things settled. Um, it came from the fact that I realized that the school team, they may be on your side, but sometimes there's just a breakdown in communication.
Mhm.
They will do what's best for your child, but there are still some mistakes that may happen on their end.
Gotcha.
So their lack of communication with me made me realize that even though I have a background in special education,
Mhm.
there were some things that were missed. I thought for sure, oh, I teach special ed students. I write IEPs in my sleep. I use the IEP program, and we're going to be fine. To have that happen, there was a little part of me that was like, oh no, not
Mhm.
not me. I should have seen this coming. So I worried that if this could happen to somebody who's already well versed in
Yeah.
education, it could happen to everybody or anybody. So it came from a place of I need to make the IEP process as clear as possible and help parents who will go to a special ed meeting and those acronyms might go over their head
Yeah.
or that maybe are too scared to ask questions, but then when they come back home, they're like, man, there was something else I should have said. So it came from a place of advocating for other parents
Okay.
who maybe need a little bit more support and need somebody who kind of works on the inside, who kind of works for the IEP team to join them and support their child.
That is amazing. Cause as you were saying that, I was literally thinking in my head, like, this is what she do, and she missed something. Imagine how many things we missed because as a parent, that's not our skill. You know, we know what our kids
Yeah.
need, but the layout of the actual IEP, we don't know all the holes in it that we should be
Yeah.
filling. So I am glad you created a business that can
Yeah.
help parents, you know, get through that because I'm probably gonna need you when it's that time. But
You let me know.
and because when I found out, I was like, oh, this is interesting because we're not at that stage, but I always follow people that I feel like I'm going to come across this sooner or later. So it's good to have that person there. And I love how you post the acronyms daily.
Oh,
Yeah, the
we're
ABCs.
we're
Yeah,
doing
I
our
love
ABC countdown. My daughter's doing an ABC countdown to the end of the school year, so I thought we're going to do one too.
Yes.
So for the month of May, every day I'm doing a letter of the alphabet and plugging in a special ed word to break it down for parents and help them understand what the acronyms mean, or just to learn a little bit more about IEPs and special education.
Yeah,
Secretly
because it
having fun
has
with
helped
it. I
me.
didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I do.
Yes, you do a lot. So I enjoy looking at those acronyms when I see them come up. So, and I have saved a few because I'm like, I may need to keep this
Oh,
in my
right.
back pocket. So if you are watching this, I'm going to give you all her information at up under in the description so you can follow her because I think as parents, no matter how down pat we think we have the IEP, I guess, meeting down packed. As you see, Christina stated that she missed some things, and this
Sure
is
did.
what she does for a living. So I think it would be great to follow Christina and get more understanding. What's one big win or small win that you have celebrated recently that you're proud of?
I think one big win for us kind of drives my husband and I crazy, but my daughter and I will come home from school and she'll want to continue playing school, which tells me that she's enjoying it this year. We're having a good
Oh,
time. That is
that is
huge. That is
big.
a huge win for
Yeah.
her. We've had a great year. For me, I've attended my first fair
Uh-huh.
um, with my IEP Clarity table and really trying to venture out of my comfort zone and doing that. So that was a huge win too.
Yes, both of those are amazing. The fact that your baby loves school, that she wants to bring it home, because I try to get my son to play school and show me what he did at school, and it's like, no, the day's over. We're not doing that.
I'll
If
tell my husband anytime she wants to do it, I'm like, where's my timesheet? I need to
yeah,
get paid for this. Go get me
yeah.
a coffee. That can be payment. Thank you.
And for you to be stepping out with your business, anytime you have something that you're passionate about, you have to step out your comfort zone. And I'm glad that you're doing that
Thank
because
you.
what you have is big and it's amazing and it's very needed in the community. So keep going, and I hope you get the best success when it comes to that. Which you
Thank you.
will. I'm not worried about
Thank you
it.
so
Like,
much. Thank
yeah,
you.
you will. What is your confession as an autism mom?
I have a lot. I count the hours until bedtime for sure. I do. There are days where, especially during the summer, oh my God, I cannot wait till she goes to bed. That is amazing.
Yes.
I have an emotional support wine that we drink. It is Cooper's Hawk Winter White.
Uh-huh.
Hot, cold, I don't really care because there's something around the holidays. It just makes me feel warm and fuzzy and cozy. And so when I need it, I will go to Cooper's Hawk Wine. I think I have 6 or 7 bottles left until they open again
Uh-huh.
because we just need a little Christmas sometime. So when she goes to bed, I will drink my emotional support wine.
And I like how you call it emotional support because it is. I
Mhm.
think we all as moms, we love our wine. Because we
Yes,
have to have it. It's like it's self-care to me. My
it's
wine
self-care.
is it,
It's
it
much
is
needed.
self-care. Like I
And
hate it. Say
and
it
I've
like
cried
that.
and I've cried at least 2 times today. So there are always times I'm still grieving. There are
Uh-huh.
times where we'll leave or we'll transition and things are hard.
Yeah.
And I have these big feelings, and my husband laughs at them because I talk about them as if I'm teaching it to a child. I'm like, I'm having big feelings right now. And I really don't know why, but it's hard. We still grieve. She's had
Yeah.
a diagnosis now. She had it when she was 4. She's going to be 8. It's almost 4 years now. I'm still grieving. It's still
Yeah.
hard,
That's
but
hard.
it feels hard because it is hard.
It
So
is.
I'm glad that I found a community of other people to kind of support us through the days where it is hard.
Yeah. And thank you for being so honest and transparent about that because as confessions of an autism mom, oftentimes I am very open and transparent about how I feel about what I'm going through. And I get chewed out because the people take me saying that I'm grieving or I'm crying as I'm in denial or I don't accept my son. And it's
Yeah.
like that's not the case. Like
Mhm.
I accept him for who he is. I'm a very supportive mom. I'm not an overbearing mom. I'm not forcing him to do things that I know he can't do.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna cry because I would if I could, I would not want my son to have autism. Like
Mhm.
I wouldn't want him to go through the things that he goes through. So I thank you for being so transparent about that, about you grieving and being
It's
open and
hard.
honest.
It's
It is
hard.
hard.
I definitely feel it, especially with the overwhelm of social media. There are parents that will post pictures of their kids. Oh, my kid's fourth soccer goal. Great. Mine was at therapy. It sucks. It's
It's hard.
hard to see. And it's
It is.
never going to continue not being hard.
I agree. And like I can 100% agree with you about that. And I try to kind of stay away from that. And I'm happy for other
Yeah.
people's kids. But it is a point where it's like, dog, my baby's at therapy, learning how to kick a ball and may
Yes.
never know how to kick that ball. You
Mhm.
know, like it may take years before he even kick a ball. Like my son doesn't know how to catch. He recently just learned how to roll a ball. So I think a lot of people don't understand that's hard for us
Mhm.
as parents. It's really
Yeah.
hard. So, but thank you so much, Christina, for
Thank
sharing
you.
everything with us. You have been great today and a joy. Like you're like a ray of sunshine with your happiness. So thank you for coming on. If you would like to tell everyone, where can they find you on social media platforms?
Absolutely. So I have a Facebook and an Instagram. Both are IEP Clarity, and my website is iepclarity.com. Through that, I have some free resources for parents. If you're in the Southwest Chicagoland area, I also have a tab where I link different therapists, medical professionals, and people that can support our kids with disabilities too.
Okay, perfect. And you all, I will put that in the description box where you can find Christina with IEP Clarity and make sure you all take advantage of her services because we need help when it comes to those IEP meetings. Christina, do you do virtual help like with the IEPs or is it just
Absolutely,
based
I
in
can.
you do you can? Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
if somebody isn't located in the state, I'm happy to help them. We can do a Zoom call or a Teams call virtually, and I can support them that way too.
Perfect. And that's good to know. Like I say, I will drop her information in the description box. And you all, thank y'all for joining us this week on Confessions of an Autism Mom. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you follow Christina on all her platforms, and make sure you share with another mom, because the IEP is a very important process when it comes to our kids going to school. So make sure you follow her and get that information. So we will see you all next week. Bye.